Hooray, we're recording. I did remember today. How about that? Most of this will probably be like that. See, it's right against the light. I wish I could figure out a better system. Because it looks like I have a white streak right through my face. Birds, the white pelican is back. I saw it. This week is the first time, and every time you go across Crab Orchard Lake, I'm hoping that you kind of glance out there, and now you've seen the great heron, right? The white with the yellow. Am I correct? The great egret. So you've pointed him out now. This morning when I came by, the white pelicans were out swarming over the wall. Okay, it is, yes.
Are there snowy egrets?
Yes, yes. I had to think.
I wasn't sure because I thought I saw one, but then thinking about the name of it.
No, it just has to do with its color is why they call them snowy, not because of weather. So I believe we have them here. I don't know, do they migrate out before the snow? Yeah, but we do, yes. I've seen one just the other day. So the white pelicans are here. A cool thing about the pelicans, especially if you've been to the beach and you've seen those gray ones, gray pelicans, and you check that off, you know, you ought to take your book and check it off. Yeah, I saw one. It's just the gray pelican, an American gray pelican. So there's only one other type of pelican, and it's the American white pelican. So there's only two, and guess what his Latin name is? What would you think his Latin class would be? We've been doing a little bit of these. We've been doing a little bit. Do you remember any of these that we talked about? Informes is the end. What do you think the beginning is? No. It's all the pelicans. It's not hard. Somebody took a wild guess. Who's pelican informes? Looks like it's in the shape of a pelican, right? Then it's probably in pelican informes. And I actually looked ahead at when we get to the birds and we start to go through those classes. By me giving you one a week like this, you're really knocking those out. So when we get over to birds, we won't have nearly as many. It's like, remember we talked about, we've done, I think, 3 so far, right? The first one was the killdeer. You remember which class? Ceratiformes. Do you remember why?
Because it was like it acted like a charade.
Yeah. He pretends, or she pretends that she's hurt, right? To get you to. Sorry, guys. Can everybody see that? See, I'm going to be standing right in your way. Pelicaniformes. Do I need to write it down? You kind of can get that in your head. In the shape of a pelican, there's only two: the gray and the white. But I thought maybe something like last time I talked about looking for insect eaters, right? The morning time is the best time. And I started thinking about it through the week. It's like, man, I told them to go out in the morning when the sun rays hit the tops of the tree. Thank you. They saved it for us. One slide. Where am I going to put that? What was I saying? I told you about when the sunlight hits the top of the trees, that's the best time to go look for the insect eaters, right? Does that mean that that's the only time they're out? No, obviously. But once the entire yard is bathed in sunlight, now they can be anywhere. In the morning, when all of this is still dark and the sun is just in the top, those insect eaters are all up there. because the insects are waking up and they want to be right there and hitting them first thing in the morning. So insect feeders are going to see them. It's easier to find them. I'm trying to help you the easy way to find them, okay? And obviously feeding seeds. Changing out your bird seed. You know, if you put bird seed out for a while and, okay, all that's coming are cardinals and chickadees. All right, let's change the food. Okay, change the food out to get some different ones. I'm trying to help you plan. It's like, I'm having a really hard time finding any finches. Put out sunflower seeds. Finches and woodpeckers, they'll come to your bird feeder. They'll come to your window, so you're not having to say, Mom, I need to go like on the Appalachian Trail for a while because I don't have enough birds. So, but today I want to talk about the migration flocks that come over, okay? Everybody knows the Canadian gooseling, right? That V shape, right? There's lots of birds that fly in V shape. So how would you know which it is? Like you see a V going over, it's like, okay, well, how do I know if you don't have your binoculars? How could you tell a Canadian goose?
Sound.
Right? It's going to make a very distinctive honking sound. Okay, Canadian geese, they just make that honking the whole time they're flying. So here's two other V shapes that you might see to help you distinguish. Okay, if it's honking and going over, then probably the Canadian goose. Although you might want to put your binoculars on it because there's a snow goose that does come over here. I've never seen one because I think I hear honking and I see the V and I don't bother to pick up binoculars. My sister's teaching me, you always look because you never know. It might be one of those other ones. There's another V that might come over your house, all black, solid black, and completely silent. Well, how would I know they're out there? Well, it's just going to be one of those. I pray about it. Are you guys praying about, Lord, I really need some more birds. Could you help me see some birds? You think it sounds silly, but you'll be amazed. He loves the birds, and he wants you to see the birds. He wants you to be amazed at what he's created. So, I don't know that I would pray, Lord, I'd really like to see a golden crown kinglet, because I was praying that I'd find an unusual bird and hit my window and die. Oh, I didn't want to see it this way. Can I see it live? Can it come and land on my finger? However you want to pray about seeing birds. But I was out one day because I heard the Canadian geese going over. This was last year, not this year. So the Canadian geese went over, and there was one really high, another flock kind of low, and then as I'm standing on my back porch, this black V goes over, and it's completely quiet. So I grab my binoculars. The distinguishing thing is they've got an orange, like where their beak is out here, orange streak right up their neck to their beak, orange streak. It's a double-crested cormorant. The cormorants are on Lake Crab Orchard Lake. I've seen them. They sit down in the water real low. Like you know how when ducks sit, most of their body's kind of up, but cormorants sit real low in the water, just like the top edge of their body's out, and then they've got that orange peak. So I know they're here. So you may happen to see a V go over. If it's silent and it's black and you see any orange, those are the double-crested cormorants going over. And see, I keep pointing like they're going to go north, but they're going to be going south, whichever way south is. Anybody know which way south is right now? No, they're going to be going that way. Okay? So that's your Canadian goose, the cormorants, which are good. But right now, these pelicans, if you get a chance to go see them out on Crab Orchard, Right now, they just look like, you know, the word cacophony. Okay, that just describes it. I mean, this is what they look like. They're just, I mean, they're just flying everywhere. And they do the same thing when they're forming up into their V. They will fly in a V shape, okay? But if you look up and you see this mass of white birds, and they're just like all over the place, and then all of a sudden they kind of form up in the V, and you think, oh, good. And they last for about 3 minutes, and then they go, whoa. You know, they just like go into this massive confusion, and then they kind of form up. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. It's like, why don't they just like pick? Are we going to fly as a mass? Or are we going to fly in a V? But they just keep going back and forth. Those are the white pelicans. So if you look up and there's this cloud, you know how those little clouds look in the summertime? That's kind of what they look, only with big, big white birds. So that's 3 V shapes that might help you distinguish. You'll be seeing that soon. But if you just go out to crab orchards, you'll see the white pelicans. Today they were way back. You know, like if you're going to Johnny Logan, I have no idea which direction to see. Whichever way, let's just pretend like I'm going this way, going to Johnny Logan, and you come out onto the first part of the bridge before the Haven. Speaking of which, the Haven is maybe a good time sometime if your mom, I know, it's iffy, but if she's running ahead, she needs to go to Heron, but she's really running ahead. Wow, I've got some extra time. Hey, Bob, could you just pull in through the Haven? You can just drive through, okay? And over on the back, there are some posts out in the water, okay? And last year, the Arctic terns were out there on the coast, and the pelicans will sometimes roost out there. So it's worth like driving through, taking a look. The people there, they like to point out birds, and they can tell you all the birds that are there too. So that's a good place to pick up a few if you're looking for some special. But before you get to, I'm back to my first sentence. Before you get to the Haven, there, if you look back on the water, there was a huge flock of them sitting in the water back in the coast. So it just looked like it was just a tiny little white mass out there. Those are the pelicans. But then there was another flock over on the right-hand side that were swarming. Okay, so enough to talk about birds. Anybody else have anything interesting about birds you want to say? Are you starting to enjoy it even a tiny bit yet? Okay, once you've seen a couple of cool ones, then you start to go, oh, this is pretty good. It takes a while, so hang in there. I hope you get to see the pelicans, because if you've seen the gray and you see the whites, then a lot of people have a life list. They just keep track of every bird they've seen, and they hope to check off every single bird at some point. I mean, they'll travel just to check off some birds. But you would have checked off all your pelicans at that point, because there's just the two. All right, that's my poster. Do you remember last time I forgot to bring it? But this actually worked well because it gave us a chance to review. It gave us a chance to review. I'll write this down. All right. All right, everybody can see that? So remember the last time I forgot to bring it, we had to fill in our Monera like a week late. That's kind of what we're doing again. Does everybody have your classification paper? Have I handed these out? Good, so your first side should be done. Okay, the one that drops down low, that's the, do what? You don't? Okay, very good. You know, I'm gonna have to, I have to take the test. I have to make this test, so we'll probably have to print it out, make it to. Everybody got this? One? Yeah. 2 Ellens, who sits, and it's good for me. So either one of you can answer any question at any time. And I found out the week that you were gone, these guys really do talk. They actually talked and gave me answers like, okay, so you're just going to have to beat Grant. You know, that's the name of the game is, can you beat Grant? Well, I don't mean to beat you up. I mean, but that's good. That's a challenge for him too, because he'll be on his toes, so he's going to be really fast too. Before I get to this, we got to talk about botany. We haven't done botany in a while. What have you been drawing in your nature journals? Have you been drawing in your nature journals? Josh says, no, it wasn't a sign, so I didn't do it. Right? I can pick on him. I've known him for a long time.
Giant city, that's actually really good. Like,
yes. So you collected some nuts?
yeah.
Have they dropped many of them? Are they still up? Or?
No, they're all down.
Wow.
I don't know, that's just a random thing because we're out there at Monday.
Yes. And then you saw them and you didn't put it in your journal though, you just, you could still probably go back and enter that. You can enter things from the past, like Grace was on a camping trip, and but then I said, well, if you saw anything on that camping trip, you can go back and you can draw something in. Okay, so that's okay with me, as long as you're not. If you took a picture of something, then you could use a picture and draw it. But I can't remember what are the things that we've already talked about with leaves, right? We've just talked about leaves so far? No?
No, we talked about
Oh, that's right.
vegetative versus reproductive
Right.
Compounds, simple.
Okay.
Woody.
Woody and herbaceous. Did we talk about the arrangement of the leaves as alternate or opposite or ruled? Did we mention that? Okay, so I do need to do that. There are various things about the leaf. Okay, that we labeled the whole leaf, right? The blade, the apex. Okay, good. So leaf. This is actually. I'm gonna write it here. I wish I could flip it over. This is leaf mosaic. Okay, a leaf mosaic. What is a mosaic? Not leaves. What is
Like a bunch of small pieces together.
Right, you've seen pictures of mosaics done in little bits of tile, glass, or whatever. Has anyone gone to the cathedral in St. Louis? That's, if you want to see some beautiful examples of mosaic, that interior is done with mosaic tiles and a lot of gold leaf. Okay, so it's actual gold. These beautiful pictures, and most cathedrals, like if you go to Europe and you're seeing people, they won't let you take pictures because it was painted, and they don't want any flash because that causes paint to fade. And so when you're in Europe, they want you to buy pictures, but you're not supposed to take pictures because they don't want to influence the paint. But in St. Louis, they go, oh, take as many pictures as you want. This is real gold. It's not going to do anything. You can take as many pictures, it's not going to fade the gold. Like, that's pretty amazing. Anyways, that's amazing.
Talking about that Friday, Kyle, and talking about she was up in St. Louis. She was saying that really crazy cathedral there.
Yes,
How pretty it was.
it's very beautiful. And you can go to concerts up there too. You guys okay over there? Okay, so we're talking about mosaic. So we're talking about the pieces, how the leaves are arranged on a stem. let's just call this our stem, okay? And again, if we're talking, usually a compound leaf has a certain opposite arrangement. I'm just going to be dealing with simple leaves right now, so I'm just drawing you a simple leaf. If one leaf is, say, here, and then the next one is here, and then the next one is here, okay? You see how they're not, it's like really bad picture, okay? But that's okay, that helps you remember it. You can see how, keep in mind, this is not flat, okay? So as the leaves are working their way up the stem, there might be one here, and then there might be one here on the back, and then there might be one here on the front. So it's not just like side, 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 side. It's going around the stem as well. But you can see that where the one leaf attaches, there's no other leaf attaching at that point. Okay? This is called alternate. Alternate. And I wonder why. Right? I can't spell alternate. Actually, I can spell it. It's just that my pen is up. So, I need this one. Right? You're in high school. You can figure this out. So that's alternate. But some are arranged where there is another leaf at exactly the same point. Guess what that's called? It's called opposites. I wonder why. There's nothing hidden about this, right? Science likes to be exact. They don't like to be too secretive. We think it feels that way because it feels a lot of Latin words, so it sounds secretive. So alternate, opposites, and then there's one other. And this is difficult for me to draw because you really have to use your imagination, okay? Imagine now that there's a leaf coming out from here straight towards you, and another leaf that's going out like that, and then there's some going off in the back, okay? If that makes sense. Okay, so like they're all connecting at the same point, and they're fanning all the way around. Okay. And at every point, there will be nothing on this stem at all until you get to here, and then all of a sudden you have these front ones, and you've got back ones. Kind of like it almost looks like a flower. But instead of it being a flower, it's the leaves themselves. So like that. Okay? This is not opposite. This is called whorl. Okay? Whorl. Just like it's whorling around all in one point. So those are your three leaf mosaics. Mosaic just means the arrangement. Why do you think leaves would be arranged in various ways?
Should catch the sun better.
Yes. To try to keep, like, I have these all really close together. They're usually not. This would be moved way up here. Okay. But you think about it. One set of leaves is not shading the next set. You'll mostly find word arrangements in tropical flowers. Okay. Things that are tropical tend to have the word best. Just in case, like I tell you this week, I want you to draw 2 different leaf arrangements. It's going to be easy to run out in the yard and get an alternate opposite. Boom, got it. But if you happen to say, boy, I sure wish I could find a wool arrangement somewhere, you might go to the Lowe's Garden Center and go over to the tropical. While your dad, buying nails or something, say, hey, I'm just going to like run over to the plants, pull out your phone, take a picture, when you get home, you can write a picture. I mean, I'm just giving you all kinds of other ways of investigating something, getting a good look at it. There are also weeds, okay? A lot of weeds like to use this. There's one that it looks almost like we're going to have thistle. Who's familiar with thistle? It's got this purpley flower at the top, and it's really nice. The goldfinches, you love it. They eat really all the seeds. Their leaves tend to be really. Okay. So those are leaf mosaics. Okay. Have we talked about the margins? Margins, leaf margins. Okay, that sounds just like mosaic sounds complicated, but really it's just the arrangement of the leaf. Now we're back talking specifically on the leaf. And what a margin is the edge. Okay, the edge of the leaf is the margin. Okay, if you have a leaf that looks like this, actually, we can talk more about. Have we talked about the veins? We have talked about, yes. So if we talk about the shape and the margin, then we talk about everything on the leaf. But I also have to talk about algae. Well, it's kind of related. They're kind of all plants, aren't they? The margin is the edge. If it's totally smooth, just like that, it's called entire. I guess they're implying entirely smooth. Okay? Entirely smooth. What do you think if it actually has little cookies? What if it goes up? What would you call something like that? Yeah. They're not all, they don't all have thorns on them. We usually think of them all having thorns, but they don't. What would you call something? That's different. Yes, very good. Tooth. Okay, tooth. There are various types of teeth in this too. Let me see how much I wanted to tell you. Because once I do this, then I can give you, next week I can hand out another lab that you're going to take. It's going to take you the year. Don't you love it how I give you these things? Oh, this will take you the whole year to do. Won't really take you a whole year. But because we're going into winter, you can't find as many leaves. I mean, you could still find some right now. All your deciduous trees have dropped. Have they all dropped? Not quite yet. They're still turning color, aren't they? Okay, so we could still maybe be okay. But then if you wanted to put it on hold, finish this lab up in the spring when the trees come out. Margins. I'm calling them entire, oh, wow. Serrate, dentate, crenate, undulate, unclip this, right? See, I'm sorry guys, I just led you astray. I'm calling it tooth. That's what I called it for the physical science class because I didn't want them to learn detail, but you're biology. So you're going to have to learn a little more detail. It is tooth, okay, but there are various types of teeth, okay? I'm going to give you there are 3 types of tooth leaves, okay? And I have no idea what this one would be because I'll tell you, let me change this one. I'm going to change this one, okay? The first one is called serrate. How many have heard of a serrated knife, right? That's the ones that have, gotta think, like think, really small. Okay, and another way to, there's small coats and lots of them. Okay, 2 things that are going to make it serrate. Okay, tiny sharp teeth pointed towards the apex. Here is your apex, right? And you can see how all these teeth are pointed that direction. They're small, sharp, and pointed towards the apex, then it's serrate. Okay? Dentate. What does that sound like? It's still teeth, right? Dentate. But not all of our teeth are like sharp and pointy. You know, we have some that are, they're not sharp. Dentate, they're larger teeth, and they tend to kind of point out. More like, nah, that's kind of it. Now, this is my petioles here. Okay, so this one has a lot, this one doesn't have as many, and they're not necessarily pointed forward, they're kind of pointed up. Okay, this is dentate. It's still toothy, but not sharp. And the last one, what is that? The third one is called crenate. Now that one, I have no idea. Anybody have a good way of remembering that? Crenate. This one are just rounded. Yeah. Okay, something like that. I have no idea what the vein structure of a crenate would be. Crenate, so serrate sharp, then dentate is not as sharp and not necessarily full. Crenate is kind of, yeah, now here's what's hard to keep straight. Crenate is a tooth, okay? There's another one called wavy. That kind of looks wavy to me, but wavy is going to be much more like, I didn't have it right. I'm trying to remember on the like a hand.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's called lobed, but that's in the shape. I guess it would be. So those are 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What did I just call this? I called it wavy. Okay, so you need to know the actual name. Here's the scientific name. Undulate. Undulate.
So that's not tooth.
This is not tooth. There are 3 teeth. Serrate, dentate, crenate. This is not tooth. It's called undulate. Can you see it now? Undulate. Okay, so that's covered all of that now. But we still haven't, have we talked shape? Palmate. Okay. This week in your book, okay, on page 433, all of this information's in your book, just so now that you've like gone to all the trouble to draw this down. That's okay. Drawing it, it's going to help you remember. On page 433 in your textbook, that's your chapters on, it's module 14 and 15. Module 14 has all of this. The leaf shape, the veins, the arrangement, the margins, all of that. So that's a good reference place to go back and look at that. All right. This week, what do I want you to do? Let's see, lab assignment. Oh, I was going to give you the lab assignment. I don't want to give you a lab. I'll hand you a lab next week. For this week, I want you to try to find how many leaves, should we say? Leaves are falling, guys. They're going to be gone pretty soon. So do you think you could find 3? Can you find 3 leaves of, 3 different margins? Nature journal. In your nature journal. Yeah, focus on the margin, but make a notation of what the mosaic is. Now, I guess if you're picking it up off the ground, you're going to have to try to look up in the tree Look up in the tree and see if you can see what the mosaic might be. I guess I'm in a tree, but there's tons of bushes that all still have leaves on them, right? So focus on the margin, make a note of the mosaic. All right, now we're ready for algae, okay? Before we can move to algae, I want to go back through the protista real quickly to make sure that you've got everything you need for the test. Okay, and there was one that I really didn't get to cover much last time, and so I want to make sure we get it. First thing, yes, we're working on that. So what sets apart Monera and Protista from the rest of them?
There's single cell.
Single cell, Lydia? Is that what you're going to say, single cell? Okay.
Protista is.
And which makes them?
Protista is prokaryotic.
This is prokaryotic.
Yeah,
Eukaryotic. Okay, so we can't, there's something that makes a line right here. These two are microscopic. There you go, Lydia. Microscopic, these are macroscopic, right? See, we're talking about this as we go. So you don't have to worry about this one as much right now. Inside Protista, though, we have two subdivisions, right? These are called subkingdoms. There are two subkingdoms, right? What was this one? Yeah, everybody, you can just shout out, because if you raise your hand, I want to see you. Protozoa, right? Protozoa. Okay, and this one is called, can somebody spell it for me?
ALGAE.
AE, that's correct. Algae. Sometimes you'll hear people say algaea, and it makes you want to reverse those, okay? Anyways, it has to do with the Latin. So we went through 4 phylums last week, right? Here are phylums. Okay, not bad, the lightning upside down. The one we did not talk about much is down here, okay? So can we start there? Yes, Sporozoa. Sporozoa. What belongs in this phylum? One, yeah, they have no way of moving around, okay? That puts them in this one. Say that again? Pathogen, right? That's all we talked about was pathogens in here, wasn't it? I'm sure there are some that are not pathogens, but the big one. What's the big one? Causes malaria, right? That's here. Now you'll also notice in there it's got this sporo, meaning it in its life cycle it will form a spore and go into an inactive phase. Okay. Can all of these form, we talked about spores over here, but we call them something different. We call them endospore over here. So yeah, there are other things that can go into spores, but this is only if the environment changes, oh, it's going to die, it makes a spore. This one, it has to do it as part of its life cycle. Okay, so this is not, it doesn't electively, well, we'll see, kind of does electively choose to become a spore. It doesn't do it because of the environment. It does it because of its life cycle. That was setting apart. Okay. What was the name of the one that causes Plasmodium? Exactly. Plasmodium is the one that's a pathogen. You'll need to know a pathogen. If he says, name 3 pathogens from the kingdom Protista, I'll tell you there's not many over here. Okay, not many. I would pick them from here. Okay, because there's plenty to choose from on this side. This might be a really good one. for malaria. And that's why when people have malaria, people who have gotten it, you have it for life. The spores go into your liver and they just kind of sit there on hold. And then every now and then they get active, and you have fever and chills and coughing. What else does it cause? I'm not sure if it causes diarrhea. You're usually very, very sick for a few weeks while it goes through that phase. When you take medicine and it'll combat it, force it back into its spores, but the spores stay. I mean, it's not like you can take a medicine and it just kills it all off and you're set for life. It's always there kind of dormant. It goes through very long cycles. And it's not like you have this constant recurrence, but there's always that possibility. Okay, somebody tell me another one. Ciliophora. It's funny how you pick that one. The ciliophora or ciliophora. Good. And what was an example of a ciliophora? The paramecium. What do ciliophora have? Cilia. Right? That's a trick question. What do they have? Oh, they have cilia. Very good. Very clear. So these cilia are all around it. Can we think of another example? Green, looks like a spear. All of ours are dead. Ball boxes. Right? No. That's masticophora. They look like a ciliophora. That's what because they look like they have cilia all the way around. But actually they each one have one. I'm sorry. I'm glad you're smart. You're staying ahead of me. Are there any pathogens in ciliophora that we can name? Valentinium coli. Right. And that's the one that don't drink the water in other countries. Okay. Anything else? What's another one? Masticophora. And these get around by a flagellum, single flagellum. So this is our ball boxes. They form a colony and then it looks like a ciliophora. The stentor had cilia all over. Remember? He's lined with it. So it's another example besides our ball box of this. Euglena, right? And then I don't need to go all into the backbone because actually we've got 5. We've got what time is it? Anybody have a clock? Okay. Okay, massive before. So then what's our last one? Sarcoidonia. Okay. What does that mean? What is sarco? What is dyna?
Flesh whirling.
Whirling flesh, right? What does that mean?
It means like all fluid.
Yeah, we got to see those. If we like put out the we saw the insights that they're fusing into those. I will get you some. I'll make sure you get to see some. Okay. But I have another cool thing that I'm volunteering to buy if you guys want me to as when we get over here. Because I like buying stuff and getting to see it. So I use you as an excuse. I really want to buy this thing. I'll see if you guys want it. If so, then I'll get it. Whirling flesh. And these are the amoeba. Was there a good pathogen in Sarcoidonia? Entamoeba stolica, right? And what did it cause? I know, see, I'm doing the same thing. If it's any trypanosoma, okay, Sarcodina. Here, my pathogen for Sarcodina is Entamoeba histolytica. Entamoeba histolytica. And it is a gut-dwelling paramecium, again, in water supplies. Don't drink the water. It's kind of a common theme, isn't it? Mastigophora. Yeah. Yes, Mastigophora. That's the tsetse fly, the African sleeping sickness. That attacks the central nervous system, is what happens. And then they, like I said, they tend to sleep. Not voluntarily, they just like. Yes, the tsetse fly, Tsetse, tsetse fly is what carries that. What carries the malaria? Mosquitoes, right? Okay. Now, after all that, you're like, man, is this woman ever going to get to today's lesson? I will. But that's a really good review. I feel like you guys have got it. You're really getting it, because this test is going to cover all of this. So it's nice to go back and make sure I distinguish what makes it go in each one. So as we get over to algae, we're not going to talk about how they move around, right? That's not what's going to distinguish them and put them into different phylums. The first thing he points out is that these little floating, I don't know what you call it, organisms, these floating organisms in the water that we call algae, we kind of class everything. Anything that's green, we call it an algae, right? Oh, I got algae here, algae there. Well, yeah, but there are some that actually act more like animals, okay? Called zooplankton, okay? Zooplankton means it's more of an animal than a plant. If it's a plant type, that's what you're going to hear. Phyta, anything means plant, right? We've been talking about phyta. Okay, and maybe I'm getting the two classes mixed up. Or maybe because I just reviewed, I think, hey, we like use this, we're going to use this a ton. This just means plant, okay? So phytoplankton, okay, the plankton is the organisms that are floating in water. If it's phyto, it's more plant. Zoo sounds like it's a name, right? And there, the phytoplankton is what actually produces more of our oxygen than all of the forests on the entire earth. Okay, people want to say, "Oh, we're cutting down all the forests in South America. We shouldn't do that." Now, I'm not saying we should. Okay, no, we should not strip the forest. It changes the environment. It changes all kinds of other things. That there are animals that depend on that. We should be good stewards of it. But it's not because of the oxygen. You can cut them all down, and the phytoplankton is still producing plenty of oxygen for us. Now, maybe we should be more concerned with what we're doing to the ocean. Are we polluting the ocean? They think of it as this huge, massive diluent. So we can throw in as much toxin in there as we want, and it'll just dilute it, and we're all set. You know, we really should be considering that and thinking about it. I'm not saying become an activist or anything like that. But, you know, just in your mind, when you hear people talk about, you know, chopping down the woods, that's not necessarily bad. To manage a wood is a very good thing. Don't strip it clean because of erosion and other things. But we should really be watching our ocean, making sure that we don't, you know, it's like once we find, oh, we've polluted it too much, well, it's too late, right? We need to really be aware and thoughtful of how we treat the water, the things that we allow to go into the oceans. Okay, that's the little soapbox for the day. Okay, the earth producers, They're also a big, just like our plants are at the bottom of that food chain, right? You know, you think of that lion or tiger, and oh, they're, you know, so strong, and they live on other animals, but generally they live on animals that live on plants, right? At some point, the thing that's feeding on the next thing down, okay, you're going to get to a point that they depend on the plants. The plant eater is eaten by the herbivore. Does that make sense? Same thing happens here. You have the plants of the ocean and the animals that eat the plants, and then you have the carnivores that eat the animals. So you've got plants at the basic level that use energy from the sun. They tend to get together. Oh, I usually bring, how many of you like to eat ice cream? Like the kind you buy and you take home? Next time, get the lid and look at the ingredients list. And I almost guarantee you will find in there carrageenan. And it's spelled in there too. Okay. I think it's 2 G's. Got my glasses. What do I say? Carrageenan. Okay. And that is seaweed that they process, and it makes a fantastic thickener. It makes it smooth and thick. That's what, you know how that French vanilla, it's just like it's nice and smooth and connected. That's that smooth connectedness usually comes from carrageenan or alginic acid or alginate. Okay, you may see that one. Okay, those are both algae or seaweed that have been processed, and they use them for thickeners. Okay, ice cream, toothpaste. You may find it on your toothpaste. Anything that's known for that smooth, thick kind of feeling. Okay, so that was kind of the general. Algae reproduce either asexually or sexually, and then there's times and conditions when they do a combination, kind of like our bacteria do. Okay, there's times when they would go through a sexual reproduction to pick up a plasmid and then pass it on, right? Algae doesn't really pick up plasmids. Sorry, that was very misrepresented. I'm talking about they use both means, asexual and sexual. There's times when there's so much food. Remember that logistical growth of the bacteria. There's times when there's so many nutrients in the water that the algae will, what they call bloom. I'm sorry, guys. Red tide, exactly, which we're going to talk a little more about when we get over here. Okay. But that's just called an algal bloom. Every pond does this. My pond, it's just, at first, when we first moved out there to the pond, in the springtime, usually our water is really nice. What would you call it, green? It's got a greenish look to it. It's nice and clear. It's a real pretty color. And every spring, it turns this really weird kind of orangey brown, like, oh no, we ruined it. What have we done? Maybe we shouldn't have put up the high dive. You know, people are stirring up the water. Oh, maybe we ruined it. And then it'll clear up and it's just fine. And so then I started marking it in my journal, my nature journal. I started noticing it happens like at the same time every year. So as part of this, let's talk just real quickly about a pond and its yearly flip. You guys know that the water flips in a pond over the season. There's the top of my pond. Okay, there's my pond. And you have all kinds of, you have plants and things growing along the edge, right? Like that. And then you've got generally no plants are growing in the bottom. This is just kind of mucky stuff, right? There's your mucky stuff. And then you have all your fish. And I'm just going to, however you draw fish. I'm just going to draw some. You have fish in there, right? Well, we all know that fish will eat things, and then they're going to go to the bathroom, right? They're going to pee and they're going to poop in the water. Sorry, it's just part of life, right? And that's really not a problem because this pee and poop is very high in nitrogen, and plants love nitrogen. Plants use nitrogen as part of their photosynthesis to grow. So it's not a big deal. It all gets filtered out with the plants that are growing along the edges of the lake. Obviously, it's got a rounded, it's not a flat lake, it's a round lake. I have to tell you that. So the plants utilize all of this nitrogen. In the winter time, when you get a layer of ice, okay, now I know here you don't get as much, but fish are not going to stay up there, I'll tell you that. Fish tend to go all down to the bottom, okay? They'll congregate in this lower part of the water where it's warmer, okay? That's why it's generally harder to go fishing in the winter because they're really not up here. This water's cool. They're cold-blooded, which we'll study, and so they're going to go deep. All of those nutrients where there's not as many plants, right, build up in the water. So you get a real high nitrogen content. I'm going to just give you that nitrogen is N2. Anytime you write nitrogen, please just write N2. You write oxygen, O2. You'll find out why in chemistry. If you get yourself in this habit, you'll save yourself a lot of trouble in chemistry later on. So the N2 builds up, okay? This gets really concentrated. And then in the springtime, this ice layer goes away, the water warms up, and the algae goes nuts. It's warm, it's getting sun, and it's got this unlimited supply of nitrogen. So algae, I mean, you just get tons of algae growing. And you think, oh my goodness, we have ruined the lake. Look at all that algae. It wasn't there last summer. Okay. Well, then the warm water from the bottom rises. Okay. The algae uses up all that excess nitrogen. It gets cooler and it actually sinks. And all the water from the bottom goes up. Actually, it kind of happens differently. The warm water goes up. Now we've got the nitrogen up to the surface. The algae blooms, eats it all up. It dies and sinks. Okay, so let's get the steps right. Our warm water rises. Nitrogen's now near the top. The algae blooms. Okay, making you think we're in the lake. Well, maybe that's what we're doing. But it turns it's a really strange. It's a pretty color, but it's not what you want. Right? And then that algae, once it uses that all up, it sinks. It'll die, it sinks to the bottom. And then all of those catfish, you catch catfish, the carp, the things that eat all the nice green stuff along the bottom of the lake, they're happy. Because now there's this new food supply. So that's our pond lip, the algal bloom. Okay? And that happens in every lake. Okay? Even if it's one of those lakes that you drive by around here, that just look brown all the time, there still is an algae bloom, and then it'll drop after it eats up all that excess nitrogen. What time? 11:08. Okay. So now that I've pressurized this, we've got to get through 5 phylums. Okay, but it's super easy to divide. I know that you can do this because they're so logical. Okay. And you guys are very logical, right, Josh? You're just like logic machine, right? So 5 of them. It's going to be based on various things. I can't tell you just any one thing. But once I start to divide it out, I think you'll help me figure out a good way for you to organize it in your mind. The first one I'm going to talk about are chlorophyta. Okay, chlorophyta. Guess what they have? It's not a trick question. Chlorophyll. These are your green algae. The ones just like in your euglena had that chlorophyll and chloroplast. Everybody familiar with the chloroplast, right? Okay. Chlorophyta, they have chlorophyll and chloroplast. They use sunlight and chlorophyll to make their own food. Now, they're not all actually green. Some of them are more of a yellowish green. I'm going to throw this out for right now. We'll come back to carotenoids later. Chlorophyll is the green. Carotenoid. Let's get rid of this pond. This was bonus stuff. And I was saying, maybe we were talking in the car. On the test, okay, if there's something that you remember from class that's not in there on the test, write it out for me. Tell me, write it on the back. So maybe Clayton just absolutely loved that whole thing about the pond and goes in and learns more about it. But it's not on the test, right? Because this is kind of our extra stuff. You can write that on the back of the page. Just, make a star. Say, he didn't ask me anything about the pond stuff, but tell me what you remember. Okay, it's kind of like bonus points. Yes? I don't want to read 500 definitions. You mean like other words you remember?
Like if, for instance, there's 20 definitions in the chat, there's 5 right down.
You really want to get points for just definitions, just pure definitions?
No.
But can you tell me, instead of just saying, well, I'd like for you to make connections in your mind. Instead of a vocabulary list, I mean, if you know the definition of a word, then surely you can tell me, chloroplast. Oh yeah, he never asked me about a chloroplast. Well, don't just say, the definition of it. Tell me where it was, what used it, why. So yeah, you're giving me the definition, but connect it to something. I would like that better, I think. Because that's kind of what I'm working on, is not making it a checklist of stuff, but you connecting it in your brain to other things. I'm sorry. I'd like to say yes to that, but I don't want to get a list of stuff. I want you to connect it. So chlorophyta, these are your green carotenoids. I think I was going to write out carotenoids. Okay, these are, this is going to sound counterintuitive. These are actually more orange. Okay, it's kind of an orangey yellow color. Carrots are very high in carotenoids. Oh, is that why they're called carrots? I wonder. These are super good for fighting cancers. Okay, really high energy type food. Not energy, but high antioxidant. Did I say that right? Antioxidant? And antioxidants. Yeah, I think I'm saying that correctly. If you want to fight off diseases, eat things that are high in carotenoids. Okay, your butternut squashes that are high color. Anything high color. Sorry, nobody likes butternut squash. I got that. So, oh, good. Somebody likes it. I saw much more of a. Okay, carrots. Anything that high in color. So the chlorophyta. Feel bad. Let's just stick with algae. Eat more algae. No, don't eat more algae. 7,000 different species just in this one file. So you can see we're really high up in our, in our divisions here. We're up at the file and there's 7,000 species within just this. Okay. Their cell wall is made of cellulose. Cellulose is a sugar-based molecule. We may talk more about cellulose. We will get to that in the chemistry part of it. That's the other thing that sets them apart. The cell wall made of cellulose, chloroplast. I'll put it here. The next one. Okay, it's going to sound similar. Christophyta. Somebody check it, see if I spelled that correctly. Is it Christophyta? Christophyta. Why do I always do it? Ignore that T. Christophyta. Check. Christophyta. Oh, I'll tell you another. A good one to remember for the chlorophyta is a thing called spirogyra. And it's an algae. If I get some of that pond water and you're looking at the protozoas, you will see spirogyra in there. And it's pretty cool because it moves while you're looking at it. It looks like a long skinny stem, and the chloroplasts are in spirals that go up on the inside. There's spirogyra. Do what? Yeah, we're just like Christophyta. Christophyta, what puts it in this glass is that the cell wall is made of silicon dioxide. You're like, ooh, silicon dioxide. Remember what silicon dioxide is? A little bit? Sand, right. Sand. What is sand? The primary component of something else that's all around. Spirogyra. S-P-I-R-O-G-Y-R-A. Spirogyra. Is an example of chlorophyta, right? Christophyta. The cell wall is made up of silicon dioxide. Okay? Which is the primary component of glass. Okay? Glass is made up of sand. Everybody knows it, right? So, Christophyta, the thing to remember here is that after the algae itself dies, the cell wall, because it's made of glass, it's still there. The glass doesn't dissolve, it stays. So then it all breaks up into tiny little fragments. Okay? This broken up cell wall of the algae is called diatomaceous earth. That's right. Can somebody check that spelling for me? I think that's right. Diatomaceous earth. Okay, and he's exactly right. A lot of gardeners will use this. It just kind of is like a powder. Exactly. Why do you think that happens? Why do you think we're doing that? Exactly. You know how it keeps them from growing up?
It's like sharp.
Exactly. All this finely cut glass, just like little shards of glass, and the bugs crawl across it, and it cuts the bottom part of the body. So it's a really good repellent. Actually, it's not a repellent. It doesn't keep them from coming. It kills them. So you can sprinkle this in your garden. It doesn't hurt you. In fact, diatomaceous earth is actually put in toothpaste many times for that scrubbing, gritty effect. So see, in small amounts, it's okay. If you don't want to eat spoonfuls of it, but in your toothpaste, it helps scrub something off. Yes. Yes. Well, when you get piles of it all together, then it's sharp. I'll try to I'll get a sample of it. Does your dad have a sample? Like, could you bring some? Ask him, see if he has some. What time is it? It's 11:18. Hey, look at that. You don't have to read all